Hey everybody, welcome to our weekly webinar. And today we're going to be going out on a limb and really testing your brains. We have two things that we're doing. One is I want to talk about a global demographic shift that you ought to know. And by the way, I don't think anybody else in the world of demographics is talking about this, and particularly not in the world of professional practice demographics, but it's going to affect you. The second thing is I want to talk about practicing in Ohio. And everybody kind of goes, Ohio? Yeah, Ohio. All right, so let me just go ahead and share my screen. And I want to talk about this big trend that is going to matter a lot to you. And if it isn't, well, that's on you. All right, here we go. Now, I've been preaching this message for a very long time. There are certain international trends that are affecting us nationally. And I want to talk about these. Obviously, guys, we are not having enough babies. Now, I know everybody's talking about the demographics of the 2020 census, but what it's going to tell you is, guys, we're having a real bad time. Not everywhere in the country, but in a lot of parts of the country. So people are saying, well, how come the practices are doing really well in this state and not doing so well in that one? And it all kind of comes down to birth rate specifically. And I want to use the world statistics that just came out in the UN as an example of why this is the case. We're hitting 2020 before very long. By 2030, some pretty grim predictions are going on, and it's going to affect you in your little office. Now, we already know that Japan and much of the European continent, including Greece, Spain, Portugal, and much of Eastern Europe, Scandinavia, and Germany are not doing so well as far as the aging population. Now look, 65 years old is what people refer to as old. I'm not old yet. I'm getting there though. 20% of these countries' populations are made of 65-year-olds and older. In the United States, it's about 15%. So we're doing much better. But when these numbers come in 2030, then percentage and number of adults who are over 65 goes up dramatically, doubles. I am telling professional practices, guys, you have got to come up with a geriatric marketing plan. And I mean your clinical as well as your marketing has got to be targeted toward people who are getting older. Remember, these are the people with money. These are the people who are paying attention to their health. Now, those who are under 30, bullets bounce off them. They can eat pizza at 2 o'clock in the morning and feel fine. I hate them. But the point is, this is going to be a big deal if you don't do it, because even in places that seem to be doing well, there are more and more people in that age group, 65 years of age and older. Now, geriatric procedures have a very wide range within the clinical world. I'm not going to go through those because your specialty, probably you have them. But unless you are thinking about how do I attract and retain seniors, it's going to be a rough decade coming up. Now, many of these countries that I've illustrated have rising debt burdens and shrinking labor markets. Now, everybody talks about, oh, you know, come on, the world population is so many kids. Guys, it isn't happening. We've already hit the top of the bell curve and we're going to start down. And when the age bell curve starts showing that people are getting older, it's too late to go back. Because the fertility rate of adults, women especially, over 35 gets to be, you can't go back. Even the best run European economies are having problems. Now, here's the thing about Japan. Japan got rich before it got old. Other countries like China got old and they never really got rich on the per capita population. Many of the states in Europe and lots of those in Asia, specifically China and Korea, are really going to be hurting, particularly when we go to 2050. And you may say, so what? What do I care? Well, here's the thing. If we look at what's going to happen in 2030, this is what the world looks like as its population ages. As we look at the just 10 years later, the problem comes in North America and Australia, and much of Europe is just going to go crazy, and it has no point of return. Real quick note, in China, there is no Social Security. 65% of the population, 65%, that's not an error, are actually have no hope for a retirement plan. And with no boys, they have a disparity between boys and girls. There's no way for them to make that up. Now you may say, what do I care? Well, guys, this is a new kind of immigration that's going to happen. North America, Australia, and Canada are going to see more and more people who are older coming to our country as refugees. And they're going, hey, we're poor and we're old and we need health care. And they're going to be knocking at the door and demanding health care. You think it's bad when you have lots of people on trains walking across the border into the southern border of the United States? Well, they've got kids and at least some potential for helping the country like the United States who are getting them. But when you're older and you can't work, you're nothing but a recipient of what's going on. And so what we're going to have, and I'm predicting this, is a serious problem with older people who are moving from other places. It's going to start with people in Asia, because people in Asia have a lot of money. I know that hard to believe perhaps, but they're the ones who are going to be coming by air, not walking across the southern border. And they're going to be making some unusual demands. But also remember, the places that people who are older want to settle when they go to a new country is among people who are just like them. So when you have people who speak a specific Asian language, those people are going to be the ones who are going to cluster in the communities in the United States where there are a lot of those speakers, Cantonese, Chinese, Indonesian, whatever. Now, what happens when we have millions of people who are seeking entry who cannot support themselves? Now, doctors, you are the primary care physicians, dentists, and other things. You're the optometrists, and you're even the veterinarians, who, by the way, are also going to be doing a boom business coming up. What are you going to do if lots of people show up and are really a good market for demanding services? You have to consider all at once, who can you serve if this trend turns out to be true? And the places that have been really successful may not be so successful long term, but the places that have been having a hard time, and I'm talking about Maine and Connecticut with an aging population, those are the places that may actually show the best hope for geriatric specific practices. Now, let me move on to our other topic for the day, and that is Ohio. Ohio is boring. Thank goodness. Now, you may say, why bring up Ohio at all? Well, it's the 7th largest state in the United States. There are a lot of people. It isn't growing. They're having a lot of change in the population, however, as people go and come. There are a few reasons why I want you to think about Ohio as a potential place to practice, not the least of which is there's just a boatload of people. And in many of these areas, the ratios of competition are actually getting better, particularly in smaller communities. Now, here's a little map that shows, it's a heat map of Ohio. In most places, you'll notice all the little red places where there are lots of people per square mile, they tend to be, well, unevenly distributed. But in Ohio, there are lots of them. On the north, south, east, and west, you'll notice that almost every county, and those are the county seats, have a growing population of people who are in red. And I'll talk about some of those places that are particularly good. Now, granted, they are not growing as much with new populations. However, there are more and more of these places springing up where the population becomes desirable for you to practice. Now, let's talk about Ohio overall. As I mentioned, there are lots of places, and the obvious one to look at is going to be Columbus, and I'll talk about Columbus in a second. But if you go to other communities, remember, Ohio was a Rust Belt, or is a Rust Belt state. A lot of places grew up because there were these wonderful transportation arteries. And those are rivers and the lakes that were able to bring raw materials in, manufacture, and ship them out. And it hit the skids kind of in the late 70s and 80s, but the manufacturing base in the United States is increasing, and Ohio is a great poster child for that. So if you look at Columbus, yeah, it had a Rust Belt thing, but Toledo and Cleveland, Akron, Cincinnati, those are the places that were really showing most manufacturing growth. And they're likely to show that again. So again, if you come to Dr. Demographics and you're saying, I just want to know, where do I go right now? You're making a mistake. You need to know where the best place is going to be so that you can set up practice and really increase the value of what you're doing. Now, one of the benefits of Ohio, and I'll talk about the benefits in a second, is it's got reasonable taxes. It has a gradually increasing population and a manufacturing base. They have benefits, those people. It's a fairly strong union state, which also helps professional practices in healthcare. I'm really making the point that I want you to give Ohio a second look, especially at the towns that I've mentioned. Akron, does anybody go to Akron because, oh my gosh, it's Akron? Or Canton? Nobody does that. Does everybody think Dayton, Ohio is the place that you want to hang out? Not so much, but that's one reason why I want you to think of it like you've never thought of it before. Now, there are some specific sites within Ohio that I want to kind of throw out to you, and I'll talk about each of them in just a second. If you look up at the northern part, and this goes by Lake Erie, New Franklin is doing much better than before. Now, one of the reasons that you look at a peripheral community in order to put a practice is because there is growth in those areas. These sites that I'm talking about, I actually show some pretty healthy growth. The rest of the state, not so much. But there is land, and it's not that expensive that they can develop new housing and manufacturing. So New Franklin has been growing. It's not a tiny little area, but you don't look at New Franklin alone. You look at the towns around it. And Grafton happens to be an example of that. Now, those are near Cleveland and Parma. Parma, by the way, for some reason, is off everybody's radar screen. I don't know why. But if you look at Cleveland, Euclid, Mentor, they're doing increasingly well. Now, I haven't seen anything really take off in Toledo. And part of that is because Toledo hasn't really been able to remake its manufacturing base. I'll be honest, it looks like the outskirts of Detroit are picking up. Just going to throw that out to you. I'd really rather have you look at Lansing, Michigan, but the point is the region is having a second look. Part of that is because the manufacturing base in Asia and in Europe isn't doing so well. So why would you come here? Aren't there places there? Yeah, but we are more flexible in the way that we reinvent ourselves. The United States has the ability to do that as far as its economy. So what's happening is new things are growing and being redeveloped and retooled in the United States that they cannot do in Asia, but especially not in Europe. Europe's loss is Ohio's gain. Now, if you look at New Albany and Galena, which are right near Columbus, they're showing a lot of potential growth as well. Now, Columbus, by the way, is the largest and fastest growing big city in Ohio. So if you're a guy who wants to say, you know, where can I put a practice? You've got to consider those as places for both startup, but really for practice purchase. That's why New Albany and Galena are so desirable for that purpose. And you'll also notice that they're right around that loop that's outside of Columbus, Ohio. And I'll be the first to admit, Columbus has some benefits, but it's cold and it's not really kind of sexy. You know, they do have a Chick-fil-A. You can always go there, but it's not the kind of place that has that cutting edge lifestyle stuff. But that makes another aspect of Ohio kind of important. This is where people can afford to open new big businesses. Now, if we just go a little further south toward where Cincinnati is, this is where Williamsville is. Williamsville is not a huge town, but it is growing very well. Again, an outskirts community in Cincinnati. These outskirts communities have far lower crime, they show better growth, and for the most part, that's where the area of opportunity is going to reside in almost every outskirt or suburban location within the United States. But Ohio has got a lot of them. Now, I have mentioned Indiana, and that's where you go to Muncie and Fort Wayne. They're not bad. If you look down into Kentucky, it's not bad. It's not spectacular. It's not showing incredible growth like Idaho or Utah, Texas, but it's got a lot. Now, if it happens to be that you're going to school or you're looking for work someplace and you want to find a place to raise your family, these are places to consider. Now, so let me just review those Ohio places that I see with promise: New Franklin, Galena, Grafton, New Albany, and Withamville. Withamsville? All right, get off my back. I'm old. I've never been there, so I can't honestly say I know. The other places I have. And I kind of have the sense that if you're looking to open a practice that might have multiple locations, these should be places that you would consider in order to put new practices. Now, let me back up. One of the benefits of going to a place like Ohio is it's not like a single big place to go. There are lots of places to go that are within a reasonable distance of each other. That's the benefit. Now, if we look at the demographics, I just want to talk about the cities for a second, the big ones. Columbus, Cleveland, and Cincinnati, and Toledo. Those are kind of biggish cities. If you are looking just for growth, they're not going to be the best. However, if you look to purchase an existing practice, to develop existing practices, that's what you've got in those top 5. So Akron falls into that too. Now, Dayton, Parma, Canton, Youngstown, and Lorain, they're showing serious growth, and those are the places that you consider for a newer startup practice. And so don't fall into the trap of saying, oh, I can't go here or I can't go there. There are a lot of opportunities within Ohio for you. Moving on, if we are looking, though, at the MSAs, Metropolitan Statistical Areas, you're going to notice that they're not really burning down the barn as far as new growth. And this is going to be true probably more of Cleveland's MSA than almost anywhere else, showing a slightly negative growth rate. However, if you go to Columbus, 1.34%, that's not bad. But remember, that's for the whole MSA. There are parts of these counties, and I've listed the counties here for you to see. Those counties are the ones that you want to get the statistics on to say, where should I go? Now, we offer a best sites report, and what you can do is look at an area of up to 5 counties. What that will tell you is, within the 5 counties you're considering, where are the places that are showing most promise? So Columbus has got Delaware, Fairfield, Franklin County. Those are places that I'm thinking that you probably want to do a best sites report on. The Cincinnati counties of Brown, Butler, Claremont, Clinton, it's a mixed bag. Warren, Hamilton, those are actually showing not so bad growth in the counties themselves, but not all the county is growing as much. And even if we were to go to Cuyahoga County, which is in this Cleveland metro area, it's not looking so bad either. And Lorain County, I think, is a bit of a surprise. Medina, the same thing. No, the whole area isn't growing. Parts of those counties are doing really well. By the way, like I said, Dayton is looking better. So is Akron, but particularly Dayton with Greene, Miami, and Montgomery counties. So think in the big picture and find the sites within it. And that is how, as a professional practice owner, you can make a boatload of money and have a tremendous happy life where you're riding off into the sunset. Now, am I saying that Ohio is going to be better than, let's say, a surrounding area like Kentucky or Indiana? Parts of it are going to do well, but don't assume that any of these states in the Midwest The whole state is what you need. You're looking for a part of the state. Are you looking for nirvana or the place that, oh my gosh, this is perfect, everything's great? No, but you're going to find places that are more than acceptable and well worth the risk. Another little thing to know about this region, you guys, these areas are doing well because the cost of housing, the cost of business, the cost of everything else is moderately low. The reason that people are moving from one state to another and even one county to another is the cost of living. Now, right now, we are offering a market report special. Mike is kind of hitting this. Mike, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah. So really the special is well, it's kind of tailored for two different groups. Tailored for those that are looking at an area, and say you're looking at Ohio, for example, in one of these areas that Scott recommended, an area like Ohio that is quite mature, and I mean that in the nicest way possible, but an area that's quite mature that has a lot of established legacy competition, you're going to need to have an aggressive marketing plan. As a matter of fact, it is going to be one of your most vital tools as you open up to have that success in the first 24 months. And so that, and November seems to be a month that we get a lot of calls for doctors saying, gosh, I'm really thinking about 2020 and I want to make sure it's better than the previous year. And so that's why we have offered this report discount. Frankly, it's a huge discount. One of the biggest discount on the marketing report that we've done all year. And so take advantage of it because it's going to end in 10 days. And so take advantage of it. It's there for you. Get your practice off on the right spot. Now, the other group is those of you that have been in practice for a long time and are finding, and again, going back to Ohio, some of these areas that are mature areas but have had some either gentrification or other things happen in the neighborhoods, and the makeup demographically is different. And so you need to be able to create possibly a new strategy that's going to meet this new market that's around you, or you're going to need to move, one of the two. And so I would guess it's probably less expensive to market correctly to your neighborhood than it is to move your practice. So let us help you develop that marketing strategy that's specific to your demographic in your neighborhood. It just doesn't have to just be Ohio. It can be wherever you're at in the world or in the United States at least. So let us help you. How you find out about that is you go to Dr. Demographics and you read about the marketing report. It's a fantastic resource. Scott has a great video there explaining the ins and outs of that report, and take advantage of it. It's a great time of the year to start thinking about marketing.
Okay, now I just want to warn you guys about one little scam that goes on. There are a lot of companies out there that are trying to say to you, if you get more patient acceptance of your dental work, that's the way to make money. I'm not saying they're really wrong, but I'm saying it's a little deceptive. What you need to consider is, how's the market going to be tomorrow? How am I going to get a new patient base entirely? Not just squeeze that rock so that water or blood will come out of it.
Yeah.
We need to expand. The idea is there's going to be some risk associated with it. Dr. Demographics' primary intention is to help you mitigate your risk by looking at a marketing idea of who is there and how do I get the practice to grow based upon who we're reaching. That's the trick. And by the way, this idea that somehow there's a little script you're going to be able to do that'll make all your problems go away.
Yeah.
Horse crap.
And I would say I agree with Scott. It's a dangerous game. It's a dangerous game when you're squeezing the rock, frankly. And if you haven't answered the question of, do I currently own the percentage of market share that I ought to in my geographic area? If you don't have that checked off first, and you go right to, I'm going to increase lifetime patient value and squeeze them for every penny. If that's immediately where you go to before you answer the market size question, you're going down a wrong path, and a very dangerous one, that if you squeeze the wrong person, you're going to get a bad review or 10 on Google, and frankly, you're going to get run out of town. And so it's a dangerous game, and yes, you should be maximizing your profitability with every patient, no question about that. But market share is the thing that you need to be focused on day in and day out with your marketing strategy.
I have one last little thing. We have just a couple minutes. You guys, there are people who are selling demographic and marketing services that are cheaper than we are. All right?
Yeah.
Absolutely true. But whenever you try to say, I'm going to do the thrifty plan, sometimes you find out they don't have very good research, not very good experience, not good backgrounds. And yes, there's data you can buy, a lot of it from real estate databases. And I'm not saying it's terrible. I'm just saying, guys, you are risking so much in your investment. If you fall into that, I wash my hands of you there. It's on you. All right, you guys, thank you. I want to thank Mike for his help today. We're going to be doing some marketing videos on communications and marketing theories for professional practices that you want to know about. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk to you later. Take care.